where are the punks at? Tom, where are they? Really?
I heard you had some resistance doing the memoir. Is that right?
It wasn't resistance. It was just I just had a different expectation. So what happened was I got, an offer from Grand Central Hachette to do a book. And I'd been working on a book of fiction for a long time. And I thought, oh, this is my chance. I'll get to finish that book. And they said, no, we want to pay you to write a memoir. And I was like, pay me? All right, I will do it. And not in a crappy, like, sellout non-punk rock way. I just mean, I had to pivot and go, okay, well, I guess that's what I'm doing. There will be time to write that other book, no big deal. So my only resistance to doing it was going, I am really boring. How am I going to make myself sound exciting? So that was the challenge.
What was it that made you say yes? It was the time. It was the
height of the pandemic, and I was in a lot of trouble, like most people. I couldn't tour, and streaming had just taken over everything. So there's no royalty checks. There was no work, no nothing. And my house had burned down in 2017, and so I was underinsured for that. I was insured for the market value when I bought it, but not for current market value, which is something they don't tell you.
I don't understand what that is.
It's like if you buy a house and you get it insured for the market value of when you bought it.
I bought a house for $500,000 and then I got it insured for $500,000.
Basically, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Instead of being able to go, I want to get it for current market value, which means say your house burns down 10 years later and it's going to cost $1 million to build it.
Right.
You only get $500,000. It's one of those kind of things.
Right. So you had found yourself in some sort of like...
Yeah. And then I was, taken advantage of by many contractors, and it was just a nightmare. And, I really needed money. But it's not that I didn't want to write things, because I write things all the time. So it was a very lovely time. It was good timing, is what it was.
I read something that you said that you were interested in writing this book because you wanted to. You thought it might help people. I
don't know if my life will help people, but hopefully, like, I do not think I have anything to offer as far as like being a psychiatrist or something. I'm not qualified, but if it reads in a way that resonates in a good way, that's enough for me. I like that.
How was the experience of writing the memoir versus songwriting and writing about your life? Is it comparable?
I've really gnarly ADHD. I'm a neurodivergent person, possibly a little on the spectrum, and so I'm a very visual thinker, and I think a lot in pictures, detail, and that was what was the common thing between writing songs and writing the memoir. The thing that was difficult was, again, making myself think about myself. It's like, why would I already know those stories. I don't want to do that. Or, God, how is this not going to sound incredibly boring to the reader? I just enjoy making up stories more than I enjoy, checking out the past and sitting there in it.
So how'd you do it?
Well, I've always been an oversharer. So, I a lot of my friends know the stories in the book. So I didn't feel like I was, giving in or saying things about myself that I wouldn't say. And nobody like twisted my arm or anything. So telling the stories wasn't hard. It was just like, I had to make sure that the details were interesting enough. And when I would get stuck, I had a really, really great editor named Carrie Fry who would give me prompts. So like, sometimes my car would just be totally stuck in the mud and I would be like, I can't get out of here. I'm so boring. Carrie, help me out. And we would Zoom once a week, and she would ask me a bunch of questions and then kind of pull me out of the mud, as it were. And she just made it really fun. Carrie's a really funny person, and we just really enjoyed hanging out together. So I really looked forward to our conversations every week.
I like a lot of the details in the book. I want to play a song from when you were a kid. Take a listen to this. sounds really good,
It's so great.
isn't it?
It is.
Not much of a when I say there's not much of a melody, I'm not disparaging the song. I just love how minimal it is.
It's Disco Drone Morricone. It's great.
It's beautiful.
It's so beautiful. And
Why am I playing that for you?
I think you're playing that for me because I bring it up in the book and I'm trying to explain what it is about the song that's so captivating. It's the drones, which the droning with the tremolo that I'm really attracted to. The disco beat I'm really into. And then she's saying atomic, and I understand what atomic means. I understand it. It's a bomb, it's an era, it's a look. But, I also live during the time of the Cold War, and all my friends and I think we're going to die at any moment. And so there's that. And so that's what was on my mind. But then she says, she just goes into this beautiful moment where she says, your hair is beautiful tonight, which is, if you say it like that, it's just bizarre. But for some reason, as a fourth grader listening to that, it was the first time I felt adult feelings reactions to a song, I think. And I had the same experience with Endless Love. But also that one, I was just like, there's something in there that I actually feel inside me and I can't put my finger on it. And I don't know what it is.
Do you because it's clear that there's no story that I think what I was looking for in that moment in the book was that's the time I decided to become a musician. That was it. But there was nothing like that.
No, it was identifying a high that I got from not quite knowing what was happening to me in reaction to a lyric and a sound together at the right moment in a song.
Are there things you take from that moment when you eventually end up making music? You're thinking I want people to have that moment, or I remember that moment?
I'm sure that I do. I don't know if I put it straight down to Blondie, your hair is beautiful, but I probably should use that as a verb. Your hair is beautiful, this section. So get the fans out and blow my hair back while I sing something complimentary.
You're listening to that record by yourself during recess in the book, and loneliness comes up throughout the book, whether it's, again, sitting alone with your records in the library at recess, to being left alone 12 hours a day while your parents were at work. Do you think that had an impact on you as an artist? Is the reason you might have been drawn to being in bands and being collective and being part of scenes later on, was that loneliness?
Yes, absolutely. I wanted to be in a band. I never wanted to be a solo performer, and I still don't. I don't have any interest in getting up on stage with a guitar and singing. I'm sure I'll do it at some point, because, it's a challenge. It's really difficult. It's one of the hardest things to do. I wanted to be in a gang. I wanted to do things with other people. But
is that because you were sort of alone by yourself a lot?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. But also that time was a time where I spent a lot of time in nature and with animals, and I didn't have any sort of guidance or, suggestion or influence as to how to interact with nature. So it was all very organic, and it was mine. It was my relationship with nature. It was my relationship with animals. And I think I just felt like everything was alive except maybe rocks or something, and even now I'm like, maybe rocks are kind of alive. I don't know.
Maybe there's
energy
in there, yeah.
there was just that respect, that level of respect for everything. And so I didn't feel completely alone out in nature the way I did when I was at my dad's house after school. I had my animals, and that was good, but it was different being in nature than it was at home. So I think that has everything to do with why I write so much about nature and stuff like that in songs.
Tell me about first going to, to see bands and starting to realize that there is a community and there's a crew out there.
Well, the first time I ever went to see a punk rock show, it was DOA and No Means No, the Fastbacks, and The Accused.
Where was this?
This was in Seattle, Washington at a place called Guerrilla Gardens. And Guerrilla Gardens had 2 theaters in it. And it was set up really cool because what would happen is you would have 2 bands in one room and 2 bands in the other. And they would stagger them so you could actually see every single band. But the turnaround time in between wasn't as long because you had people setting up while other people were playing. It was pretty genius. But I remember it cost $5 whole to see 4 bands. It was a very US and Canada together experience, you know? Like I've grown up in such close proximity with Canada that it just felt natural. I was there as an observer and my eyes were just peeled like naked little grapes. I was just looking at everything, just like, what is going on? I just want to be here every night of my life for the rest of my life.
What do you mean you were there as an observer?
I felt like I was getting to be a fly on the wall of something, because I did not think for one second that a single person there would notice that I was there, let alone that I had any importance, or I just figured I would be invisible, which I think I pretty much was. But, you know, there was a freedom in that to see what was happening and to observe everything. And like, I feel like I just was fixated on every detail and I just couldn't take it in quickly enough. Like every tattoo and every patch on somebody's coat and every sticker and all the instruments and, you know, what the seats were made out of. Like they were old airplane seats in this place. And it was dirty and grubby and it was paradise. It was just paradise.
Why do you think you loved it so much? What do you think it was about it?
Well, seeing live music is completely different than listening to a record. There's a different sort of vibration that happens. And then there's the collective circuit being created. Like the band is half the circuit and the audience is the other half. And then it's like an alternating current electricity where it feeds itself. And it's one of the greatest skills that human beings have is to communicate in that way. And even if you're just observing it and appreciating it, you are amplifying it. It's the craziest physics, and it is the most divine feeling I think there is.
You write in the book about seeing posters of men in bands on the wall and feeling this anger towards them. How do you explain that feeling then?
I don't know. It's difficult to explain. Like, I just wanted to be one of them. I didn't, you know, deny them their validity or want them to go away. I didn't understand, because the rock and roll mythology is very, very potent and very strong, that there's room for everyone in music. You know, rock and roll mythology is really boring and really stodgy and old but really powerful.
And that mythology says what?
That mythology says there's only room for a couple women here. And if you're going to be one of them, you bet. I don't know how you're even supposed to do that. So I was definitely jealous of other women who were in bands, like way more than I was of men. And I was downright misogynist about it. Like, you know, I was a very unimportant little girl. You know, I was a little girl growing up in America in the 70s and 80s, like, that my parents didn't want. So it's like, you couldn't be... I didn't know how I could be less of something than I was. So it just seemed to me, impossible that I could be there on that poster playing in the band. But also, these other women were taking the spot that I should get. Not that I knew how to get to the spot that they were taking that I should get.
That's my spot.
Exactly. And it's total BS. And like, everybody knows it's not true. But it's not something that you think about and go, oh, that's what's happening, until later sometimes.
How did it feel when you started actually playing in those bands around the Pacific Northwest? How did it feel when you actually got in those? I mean, this is before Vancouver, like when you started getting those early bands.
I felt the freedom of, oh my God, that was really none of that was right. And starting to support other women opened it. My heart grew 3 sizes that day, you know, like it totally, I understood the reciprocity of support and how it was very much like that circuit I talked about. It's the beautiful energy that cools and drives itself, where everyone wins and there's room for everyone. the sports kind of thinking that's overlaid over music and arts is very harmful.
Competitive.
That competitive sort of, there's only room for one at the top, the at the top kind of thinking and ranking. The ranking of things is very harmful, I think. So
It's very anti-art anyway.
it's very anti-art and very anti-music. And, I understand how things got that way, but it doesn't make me like them anymore.
So you're in this collective of musicians. You're around other women making music, and you're saying, well, it doesn't have to be that way. It can feel good. It can feel supportive. It can feel great.
Yeah. And, that came from me just finally going, well, if I'm so unimportant and I'm so invisible, I can do whatever I want because who's going to notice? That is freedom. Yay. And so I just went that way.
When you went to Vancouver to go to art school, how much of a change was that for you?
It was the most positive change that I remember happening in my life.
Tell me.
Well, I got into art school in Vancouver. I had friends in Vancouver and support, and I thrived. And, back home in Tacoma, I had just gone through being diagnosed as ADHD, and, I was put on medication, and I went from flunking out of school to being on the dean's list in a very short period of time. So I felt that I had figured something out for myself and that I had saved myself. And then I went to Vancouver, and I loved school. And I did really well. And I felt like I wasn't stupid and that I wasn't useless. And it was such a thriving community, thriving music community. And, the Canadian music scene is very different than it was in the United States. Like if you're in a band in Vancouver, you have to just be okay with the fact that your bass player is going to be in 5 other bands because the population just isn't what it is. In the United States, like there's just less people. So there was more of a potluck sort of feel rather than like a competitive feel. And I think that was the healthiest thing I've ever been a part of.
It's funny. I remember finding, because I was a fan of yours before I knew anything about you. Like I was a fan. I was a fan of yours before I knew about the New Pornographer, because I like country music a lot, right? So I listened to your records with the Sadies, and I was on Napster, trying to track them down because I couldn't get a lot of them in St. John's, and I remember finding out that you weren't Canadian. And in retrospect, I think I was so surprised. I don't know what this says about my identity as a Canadian, because I'm just not used to Americans coming to Canada to find music communities. It's almost always goes the other way.
I know, but it was so much healthier in Canada. Like it could not have been more fortuitous. And I thought I was Canadian too, just so you know. I lived in Bellingham, Washington, and my grandparents lived in the mountains right below the Canadian border. And, in the 70s, there weren't a lot of media outlets. We had CBC, period.
Cool.
There just was like KVOS 12, but CBC is what we had. And so I remember being in school as a little girl and being asked what country we live in. And I said, Canada, because I just heard Canadian media all the time. So I thought we were Canadian. So I'm with you. I thought I was Canadian too.
In Canada, your music career really starts happening. You're in a few bands. You start recording solo music. You write about a big breakthrough coming when you write this song.
When I called you returning to the house you called from, but I know that I'm your favorite, and I say yes.
That's Neko Case with Favorite from Canadian Amp. Favorite with no U, by the way. I want to point that out.
It's true.
It's the American spelling of it.
I know. But my next record has Canadian spelling on it. I can't tell you what it's called, but look out for it.
Okay. Is the first song?
That is the dumbest thing ever. So look out for it.
I will.
I'm coming.
It's called Color with a U.
No, but it is a reference to egg. Okay, I'm just going to say one word of it.
Okay.
It's gray. And I like the spelling with an E
Yeah.
way more than I like it with an A. It just doesn't work with an A.
The A is stupid.
Thank you.
I know we're in a trade war right now, but I'll say it. The A is stupid.
It's so stupid.
That was the first song you ever wrote on your own. You write about, it was a very pivotal moment for you. Talk to me about how you felt writing that song.
Well, that song would not have happened if I hadn't been working on a record here in Toronto with Don Kerr at his and Dale Morningstar at the gas station, which is their recording studio, which is no longer there because I think it's condos now. But Don plays cello, and he had a tenor guitar in his studio, and they're tuned the same as a cello. So it was a good way for him to play guitar and keep up his cello fingering chops, right? And I was like, what is that 4-string guitar? Because I have very tiny hands. I could just never get my hands around the neck of a 6-string and like make good progress. And so I would give up because I'm really impatient. But so he told me all about it, and I could not believe how I did not know this instrument existed until this point. So thank you, Don. I appreciate that very much. So I went home I was living in Seattle at that time, and I found one at a place called The Trading Musician. And with it, I started to play it, and I realized I wasn't interested in learning songs to play, like from a songbook or anything. I needed it to sound like a melody. I needed it to sound musical. So then I just started writing things, and that's how Favorite came about. And yeah, that was the first one. And it changed the way I do vocal phrasing. Like I was so much more in control over what I could do.
It must have just also felt good to know that you could write a song. That like it must have felt good to write a song.
Yeah, because up until that point, there's a thing that happens to some people where, you know, I could see what technical ability was, and I could hear it when I heard it. And it was so frustrating to know that I had the ability to do those things, but I didn't have the physical ability to do those things.
Right.
So being able to pluck something out on the guitar was a good beginning and was very liberating. And it definitely, like, I was able to kind of figure out my own sound.
I think for people who are listening to this who know then that, you know, the new pornographers are happening at the same time that the solo Neko Case records are happening and things are going really well. I think from the outside, there's a real glitz and glamourness to the next part of the story in their minds. Oh, well, you know, they were probably on tour buses, and they were probably, you know, they were probably wined and dined and you know, gowns and glamour and suits. But like, some of my favorite moments in the book are when you talk about what it's actually like to be a musician and a touring musician. 20-hour drives, sleeping on floors, fighting with your bandmates. It was tough then. I should also add, it's still tough. So when you decided to be open about the realities faced by musicians right now in the book, tell me a little bit about that.
People think that, you know, if you're in a magazine or a newspaper that you must be making a lot of money, or you must have money. And I actually thought that I had money for a while. Like I even believed it to that point and made a lot of really terrible mistakes. But also people don't understand that what they do out of convenience has a lot of really gnarly consequences. And, you know, people may say, well, we don't have as many great live clubs anymore. It's like, well, that's because streaming. It's what it is. Some bands don't tour anymore because they can afford to. And when you don't have the live club, you don't have the local people who work there. You don't have people at radio talking about their record. You know, it's just, there's this weird feeling that people are trying to make musicians extinct sometimes. And I know that's not true. I'm sure that large corporations would really like that. But the thing is like, there's no way AI music is going to make you pull your car over and cry. It's not going to do that. It's not going to fill you with beautiful feelings. We just have to move to a different platform. You know, streaming is not here for us. Streaming has aligned itself with some very right-wing ideas too. And I can't really be around for it much longer.
The technology is itself not bad. Like it's nice to be able to hear music.
The technology is great.
But
it's like, you know,
miraculous, really.
Yeah, it's miraculous and fantastic, but it's being hoarded and, you know, being used to manipulate and rake profits. Like, we don't have to pay them at all, is kind of the idea. And, you know, the owner of Spotify even said that it doesn't cost that much to make music, which he doesn't know anything about. I don't even know if he likes music.
So when you say you're just about done with it, what do you mean?
The only reason I haven't pulled my music from Spotify is because I have a very good relationship with my record company, Anti.
Good record label.
Yes, they're wonderful. And we have a 50-50 relationship. And they've always come through for me. They've done everything they ever said they would do and more. And so they said, please don't pull it at this time. And so I said, all right, I will compromise and I will not pull it at this time because I love them and because we have a good relationship. And they're holding out for something I can't quite see. But it doesn't mean I'm going to disrespect them. I mean, I have nothing to gain from this unless it goes a different way other than making them happy, which I will do because I care about them and I
Right.
care about what happens to them.
But it's not lying in your pockets. It's not helping you rebuild your house.
There's
It's not,
nothing that's
Yeah.
coming from it except for, you know, maybe some exposure sometimes, but when it aligns with a right-wing ideology, aka fascist, aka Nazi, I'm not going to stick around. I can't abide that. It's not okay. And everybody's very comfortable and people won't say those words right now.
It does feel like I'm stopping. I haven't been hearing, like I said earlier, I haven't been hearing artists talk a lot about it anymore. Like I haven't heard the artists talk because it's such a powerful thing. You know, it's such a powerful, massive organization that we rely on for our music, and it's hard to speak out against it.
I mean, it is, but it isn't. It's like I've done a lot of interviews in the United States with public radio, and you know, I'll say something about it, and there will be complete silence on the other end, and I will realize, well, they're scared, you know, and it's like you're going to lose your job, regardless. So go out fighting. Don't do it silently. Where are the punks at? Tom, where are they? Really?
I think about this, that on Fridays in St. John's, I would go out and every night, every single Friday, I mean, and Saturday, but Friday, I would go downtown to where the bars were and I would say, who's playing? And I would just go to see whoever was playing.
Yep.
Whatever. And they were all local bands. If they were from the rest of Canada, it was exciting.
Yeah,
but it was
right?
all local bands. And that's where that was where my community was. That's where I met my community.
Yep.
And that's what
There's something about a live music venue that does not succumb to like a weird chain reality where it's not like, you know, a McDonald's or something. It's very organic, and it's where you take your little brother there for a show, or you meet the love of your life, or meet your best friend, you know, like all those things happen there. And it was so powerful.
So that's my answer to where all the punks these days is that they're not meeting one another and fomenting that kind of thing. My sister, by the way, took me to my first show. She did sneak me in, when I was 16. Joel Plaskett.
Joel Plaskett
at the Ship. Did you ever play the Ship in St. John's?
I've never played St. John's.
Oh, you should come
I've
out.
never been to Newfoundland. Can you believe that?
Oh, they love you out there, Neko.
I want to go so bad. Do you know how long I've been trying to go?
Do you want to be the mayor? You can be the mayor.
Dude, sign me up. I'll move there tomorrow.
Let's make it happen.
Okay,
Really,
fine.
They love you. They love country music out there, and they love
ready.
you. They
I'm
love
ready.
punks. They love country music.
Okay.
All right.
I'm going. And did you used to do the thing where if you couldn't get into the show, you'd just listen from outside and it still felt cool?
Yeah, I would do that a little bit.
Wasn't that the best?
I would do that a little bit. But I also knew all the back doors.
Yeah.
So I would go in through the back door. And people, and Bill at the Ship's listening to this. I'm sorry, Bill. Back to the memoir. You wrote it because, hey, this is a nice opportunity for me. This is a nice opportunity to make a couple of bucks here, and in a hard time. After writing it, did you learn anything, in all seriousness, did you learn anything new about yourself that might have surprised you?
Not so much as I was excited to finally have, like, when I got the first galley, I was like, okay, all those thoughts and all those memories are in this brick. It's like a hard drive. And I can put it over here on this shelf, and I can, not that I didn't want to think about those things, but it's like, there's more room in there now for other things.
You just get it all out.
Just put it over there, hang on to that just in case I need it. But now there's room for more stuff.
Thanks for the memoir. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me.